My name is Barbara, 67 years old, and until last year I thought I knew what family meant. After my Robert passed, I lived alone with memories and the $5 million estate he built for us. My daughter Ashley and her husband James visited often, their smiles never revealing what lay beneath. Then everything changed. The day my son-in-law's fist connected with my face, my own daughter dragging me by my hair across our family lawn. I learned the true price of money. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button, as I share how a neighbor's 911 call saved more than just my life. I met Robert when I was just 20 years old, working at the local diner while putting myself through community college. He came in every morning for coffee and scrambled eggs, always leaving a generous tip and a kind word. After 3 months of this routine, he finally asked me on a date. I still remember what he wore that day, a navy blue suit that made his eyes sparkle. We married a year later in a simple ceremony with just our closest friends and family. Robert was brilliant with money. He started small, buying a rundown duplex that we fixed up ourselves on weekends. He'd handle the plumbing and electrical work while I painted and decorated. That first property led to another and another. By our 10th anniversary, we owned 12 rental properties across the city. Then he started investing in the stock market, always researching carefully, making calculated moves that somehow paid off more often than not. Through it all, we raised our daughter Ashley. She was our only child born after several heartbreaking miscarriages. Perhaps that's why we spoiled her more than we should have. Ashley was beautiful from the moment she was born, blonde curls like mine and Robert's piercing blue eyes. She had her father wrapped around her little finger. Whatever Ashley wanted, Ashley got. The newest toys designer clothes for school, the car of her dreams on her 16th birthday. I tried to instill values in her, the importance of hard work, kindness, gratitude. But looking back now, I wonder if those lessons ever truly took root. Robert's philosophy was that he worked hard so his daughter wouldn't have to struggle like we did. I should have seen then how this might shape her understanding of money and effort. Ashley met James during her second year of college. He was studying business administration, ambitious and charming. The first time she brought him home for dinner, he arrived with flowers for me and a bottle of Robert's favorite whiskey. He asked thoughtful questions about Robert's business ventures, seeming genuinely interested in learning from him. Over the next few years, as their relationship grew serious, James became like part of our family. He helped Robert with yard work without being asked. He remembered my birthday and always brought my favorite chocolates. When he asked for Ashley's hand in marriage, Robert and I were delighted. Their wedding was lavish, more elaborate than anything Robert and I would have chosen for ourselves, but we wanted them to have their perfect day. We covered most of the expenses, though we never told them the exact amount. That was our pattern, I realize now. We were generous with financial help, but private about the full extent of our wealth. After they married, Ashley and James bought a house about 30 minutes from ours. A beautiful place, but perhaps a bit beyond what they could comfortably afford on their salaries. James worked at a local investment firm, and Ashley taught elementary school before deciding to take a break when they started trying for a baby. During those early years of their marriage, our relationship was wonderful. Sunday dinners at our house became a tradition. We took family vacations together, a cruise to Alaska, a tour of Italy a week, at a beach house in Florida. James always insisted on contributing something, even when we offered to pay, which we appreciated as a sign of his independence and pride. Our home, the one where all this would eventually unfold, was Robert's pride and joy. A 4-bedroom colonial on an acre of land with gardens I tended myself, and a workshop where Robert spent hours tinkering on weekends. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was beautiful, filled with 40 years of memories. The dining room table, where we celebrated countless holidays. The living room, where Ashley opened Christmas presents as a child. the kitchen where Robert and I danced on our anniversary nights after the dishes were done. I never thought I'd be afraid within those walls. Never imagined my own family would be the ones to make me feel unsafe. While Robert was alive, he handled most of our financial matters, though he always kept me informed. We lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. We donated to charities, helped fund Ashley's teaching degree, contributed to a down payment on their house. We were generous, I believe, but also mindful of boundaries. Robert always said it was important that Ashley and James build their own life, face their own challenges, and experience the satisfaction of overcoming them. As I think back now, I wonder if we should have been more transparent about our finances. If Ashley and James had known the full extent of Robert's success, would it have changed things? Or would it have only accelerated what was to come? Everything changed when Robert died. It was sudden, a massive heart attack while working in his garden. One minute he was planting tomatoes, the next he was gone. 68 years old and still so full of life and plans. The shock was overwhelming. Ashley was devastated too, I know that. She and her father had always been close. During the funeral, she stayed by my side, holding my hand through the service, helping me greet the hundreds of people who came to pay their respects. James was supportive as well, handling arrangements, making sure I ate fielding phone calls. The reading of the will happened 3 weeks later. Robert's attorney Michael, who had also been our friend for 20 years, came to the house. Ashley and James sat with me in the living room as Michael explained the details. Robert had left everything to me. The house, the investment portfolio, the rental properties, the savings accounts. All told about $5 million. Ashley would inherit everything after I passed, but for now the estate was entirely in my control. I saw the shock on Ashley's face, quickly masked, but unmistakable. Later, she told me she had assumed her father would split things equally between us. I tried to explain that Robert wanted to ensure I was taken care of first, that everything would eventually come to her. James nodded, understanding, squeezing Ashley's hand supportively, but there was something in his eyes that troubled me. Within days, the frequency of their visits increased. Ashley called every morning to check on me, which was touching at first. James began dropping by after work with dinner or groceries. These gestures seemed kind, born of concern for a grieving widow, and initially I was grateful for their presence in that big empty house. Then the conversations began to shift. James started discussing investment opportunities, suggesting I might want to diversify my portfolio now that Robert wasn't handling it. He talked about a friend's startup company that needed investors, mentioning returns of 30 or 40% within a year. When I said I preferred to keep things as Robert had arranged them, at least for now, his enthusiasm dimmed. "Just trying to help Barbara," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Robert would want your money working for you, not just sitting in safe, low-yield accounts." Ashley's approach was different. She began mentioning their struggles, the mortgage payments that were such a burden, the cost of repairs on their roof, how they were trying to save for fertility treatments, but healthcare coverage was so limited. She never directly asked for money, but the implications were clear. I helped where I could. I paid for their roof replacement as a gift. When their air conditioning unit failed during a heat wave, I covered that too. It gave me joy to ease their burdens, to use some of our good fortune to make their lives better. But the requests, both subtle and overt, kept coming. James suggested they could move in with me to help take care of me while renting out their house for additional income. Ashley mentioned a luxury SUV that would be so much safer than her current car, especially when they had children. Each time I fulfilled one request, another materialized. 4 months after Robert's death, I went into his office looking for some insurance paperwork and noticed things had been moved. The drawer where he kept our financial statements was slightly open, folders rearranged. When I mentioned this to Ashley, she suggested I might have done it myself and forgotten, Or perhaps Michael had been looking for documents when he visited. I knew better, but I said nothing. Instead, I began paying more attention. I noticed how James scanned the room when he thought I wasn't watching, how his eyes lingered on art pieces or antiques as if mentally appraising their value. I caught Ashley opening cabinet drawers in the dining room where we kept some valuable silverware, closing them quickly when I entered. One evening, James brought up the topic of my will. "Have you updated it since Dad passed?" he asked casually over dinner. "You should make sure everything's in order. We worry about you." When I mentioned I had an appointment with Michael the following week, Ashley and James exchanged a look. "Mom, you know Michael was Dad's friend first," Ashley said. "Maybe you should consider someone more impartial. James has a colleague who specializes in estate planning." I smiled and said I was comfortable with Michael. The conversation moved on, but the atmosphere had changed. When I declined a second glass of wine, James pushed the bottle toward me. "Come on, Barbara, live a little. Robert wouldn't want you counting pennies and worrying about every little thing." It was the first time I felt uncomfortable in their presence. The first time I wondered if their concern was for me or for what I possessed. The next day I called Michael and asked him to come over. I told him about my concerns, and he listened without judgment. "Do you want to make any changes to your arrangements?" he asked. "Not yet," I replied, "but I want to know my options." He explained that I could consider setting up trusts with specific conditions or making smaller gifts over time with clear boundaries. "Robert was worried about this very scenario," Michael admitted. "He knew how generous you are, and he wanted to make sure no one took advantage of that." When I asked why Robert hadn't split the inheritance, Michael sighed. He and I had several conversations about it. He was concerned about James's influence over Ashley, especially regarding money. He wanted you to have full control so you could make those assessments yourself. As I showed Michael out, I noticed James's car slowly driving past my house. He didn't stop or wave, just continued down the street. I wondered how long he had been there, what he had seen. A chill ran through me as I locked my door that night. The holidays were approaching, my first without Robert. Ashley suggested I join them for Thanksgiving rather than hosting as I usually did. "It's too much work for you, Mom," she insisted. "Let us take care of everything." I agreed, touched by the offer. But when I arrived at their house, I was surprised to find several other guests. James's parents, his brother and sister-in-law, and a couple I didn't recognize who were introduced as old friends, but who seemed unusually interested in my life and living situation. During dinner, James's mother, Patricia, asked if I was managing all right in that big house alone. Before I could answer, James jumped in. "Mom's been struggling a bit, actually. We're concerned about her being so isolated." I stared at him in confusion. "I'm doing fine," I said firmly. "I have my garden club, my volunteer work at the library, my weekly lunch with Carol. I'm hardly isolated." James's father nodded sympathetically. "It's common to put on a brave face, Barbara. No shame in admitting when you need help." Throughout the evening, similar comments continued. Ashley mentioned finding expired food in my refrigerator during her last visit untrue, and James talked about having to fix a porch light. I couldn't manage, he had offered. I hadn't asked. The narrative being constructed was clear. Poor Barbara unable to cope after Robert's death, possibly not thinking clearly. The unknown couple eventually revealed they were a doctor and his wife. The Dr. Thomas mentioned his specialization in geriatric medicine and offered to stop by sometime if I had any concerns. His card, which he pressed into my hand as I left, indicated he specialized in neurological disorders and dementia. On the drive home, I called Carol my best friend for 30 years. "Something's not right," I told her. "It feels like they're building some kind of case." "For what?" Carol asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but I think it has to do with the money." The following week, rumors began reaching me. My neighbour Nancy mentioned hearing I was having memory problems. A fellow volunteer at the library asked if it was true I was thinking of selling the house because it was too much to maintain. My pastor called to check if I needed assistance with managing day-to-day tasks. I traced each rumour back to either Ashley James or their circle. They were systematically planting seeds of doubt about my competence. Meanwhile, things in my home began to break or malfunction with unusual frequency. The garbage disposal jammed with what looked like deliberately inserted bottle caps. The thermostat settings were changed when I wasn't looking, leaving me freezing or sweltering. A pipe under the kitchen sink developed a leak right after James had been checking the plumbing. Each incident was followed by Ashley or James arriving to rescue me, often commenting to neighbours or service people about how worried they were about my ability to maintain the house. Then I discovered my mother's diamond earrings were missing from my jewellery box. These were precious to me, not just for their monetary value, but because they represented generations of women in my family. When I called Ashley to ask if she had seen them, her response was too casual. "I borrowed them for the charity gala last month, Mum. Don't you remember giving them to me? I still have them at home." I had done no such thing. When I insisted on this point, Ashley's voice took on a concerned tone. "Mom, we talked about it over coffee. You specifically said I could wear them because they would match my dress. Don't tell me you're forgetting our conversations now." This tactic, making me doubt my own memory, became increasingly common. Items would disappear, conversations would be reinvented, plans would be changed, and I would be told I had agreed to the new arrangements. When I confronted Ashley about taking the earrings without permission, James intervened. For the first time, I saw his anger surface. His face reddened and he stepped between Ashley and me. "You need to back off, Barbara," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Ashley is trying to help you, and this is how you thank her by accusing her of stealing. Maybe Robert was right to be concerned about your mental state." I stepped back, shocked by both his tone and the reference to Robert. "What do you mean Robert never worried about my mental state?" James smirked. "There's a lot you don't know about private conversations between a father and his son-in-law." After they left, I called Michael again. This time I was direct. "I need to protect myself. I think Ashley and James are trying to get control of my assets by making me appear incompetent." Michael's silence confirmed my fears. "I've seen this before," he finally said. "Let me make some calls." The next phase of their plan became apparent when Ashley began suggesting I see a specialist. "Just for a checkup, Mom. Everyone our age should have cognitive screenings." I agreed, but insisted on seeing my own doctor, not their friend Thomas. This clearly frustrated them. My doctor, who had known me for 20 years, found nothing concerning and documented this clearly in my records. Undeterred, James began dropping by unannounced, often when Ashley was busy. During these visits, his behavior became increasingly inappropriate. He would stand too close, comment on my appearance in ways that made me uncomfortable, or accidentally walk in when I was changing after a shower. I began locking my bedroom door. I installed a security system with cameras, on Michael's advice, without telling Ashley or James. The cameras caught James testing door handles throughout the house, checking if they were locked. They recorded him searching through my desk when I went to make coffee. Most disturbingly, they showed Ashley adding something to my tea when she thought I wasn't watching. I stopped eating or drinking anything they prepared. When Ashley noticed and commented, I made excuses about stomach troubles or changing preferences. My friendship with Carol became my lifeline. Unlike many others who had been influenced by Ashley and James's rumors, Carol knew me too well to believe them. She began coming over more often, sometimes arriving when Ashley and James were there, observing their behavior with a critical eye. "They don't even hide their annoyance when I show up," she told me after one such visit. James especially. That man has cold eyes when he thinks no one's looking at him. Through Carol, I learned that Ashley and James had approached several of my friends with concerns about my well-being. They had suggested forming a care committee to help make decisions for me. Thankfully, most had declined, uncomfortable with the idea. One afternoon, I overheard Ashley and James talking in the kitchen while I was supposedly napping upstairs. I had installed a small audio recorder near the kitchen island, another of Michael's suggestions that had initially seemed paranoid but was proving necessary. "We need to move faster," James was saying. "She's getting suspicious, and that friend Carol is always hanging around now." "What do you suggest?" Ashley's voice sounded tired, stressed. "We've tried everything." "Not everything," James replied. "If we can get documentation of cognitive impairment, we can petition for guardianship. My friend at the courthouse says it's pretty straightforward with the right medical support." "She won't see Thomas." "Then we create a situation where she has to see someone. An emergency. Something that demonstrates she's a danger to herself." "Like what?" Ashley asked. There was a pause before James answered. "A fall, a kitchen fire, something with her medications." "You're talking about hurting my mother," Ashley said, but her voice held more hesitation than outrage. "I'm talking about $5 million, James responded. "Think about what we could do with that kind of money, the life we could have, the house on the lake, traveling whenever we want, never worrying about bills again. Isn't that worth a little discomfort?" Their voices moved away, and I couldn't hear Ashley's response. But I had heard enough. My own daughter was considering harming me for money. The realization was like ice in my veins. That evening, I called Michael from Carol's house, using her phone in case mine was being monitored. "I need to change my will," I said, immediately. The next morning, I went to Michael's office and signed a new will. Ashley would no longer inherit anything directly. Instead, I established a charitable foundation in Robert's name that would receive the bulk of the estate. A small trust would provide Ashley with limited income, but she would never control the principal amount. The house and remaining assets would go to various charities Robert and I had supported throughout our marriage. As I signed the documents, I felt no satisfaction, only profound sadness. This wasn't what Robert and I had planned. This wasn't the legacy we wanted to leave. But I would not reward the behavior I had witnessed. Michael warned me that Ashley and James might escalate when they discovered the changes. "They won't find out unless someone tells them," I said. Unfortunately, I underestimated the reach of their desperation. 2 days later, Ashley called in a state of agitation. "How could you, Mom? After everything we've done for you." Somehow they had learned about the new will. Later, I discovered that a clerk in Michael's office was distantly related to James's college roommate, a connection I couldn't have possibly anticipated. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything came to a head. I was in the garden planting the rose bushes Robert had ordered before his death that had finally arrived. The soil was warm beneath my hands, the sun pleasant on my back. For a brief moment, I felt at peace. Then a car door slammed in the driveway. Heavy footsteps approached across the lawn. James's voice, tight with barely controlled rage, called my name. I stood slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. Ashley and James stood side by side, their expressions hard and unfamiliar. In that moment, I didn't recognize my daughter at all. "We need to talk," James said, gesturing toward the house. Inside, I offered them water, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. They refused. We sat in the living room where we had shared so many happy moments, holidays, birthdays, simple Sunday afternoons, watching old movies. Now the air was thick with tension. "Why did you change the will?" Ashley demanded without preamble. I met her gaze steadily. "Because I've seen how you both behave when you think money is within reach. I've watched you spread rumors about my mental health, take my possessions, search through my private papers. I've even recorded James suggesting you create an accident to have me declared incompetent." Their faces registered shock, then fury. James recovered first. "You're paranoid, delusional. This is exactly why we've been concerned." "I have recordings," I said calmly, "and witnesses. Carol has copies of everything, as does Michael. If anything happens to me, they know exactly what to do with that information." Ashley began to cry, but the tears seemed performative, nothing like the genuine emotion I remembered from her childhood. "How can you think these things about us?" "About me, I'm your daughter." "Yes," I said, and my heart broke all over again. "You are, which makes your betrayal all the more painful." James stood abruptly pacing the room. "This is ridiculous. We've done nothing but try to help you since Robert died. You're twisting everything, seeing conspiracies where there's only concern." "Gaslighting doesn't work when there are cameras, James," I replied. "I have footage of you searching my house, testing door handles, discussing ways to have me declared incompetent." His face contorted with rage. "You spied on us in our own family. This is my house," I reminded him, "and you forced my hand with your behavior." James moved toward me, then his hands clenched into fists. "You ungrateful old woman, after everything we've done." "What exactly have you done, James, besides try to steal what Robert and I spent a lifetime building?" His control snapped. James lunged forward, his fist connecting with my cheek before I could react. Pain exploded across my face as I fell backward, crashing into the coffee table before hitting the floor. Through a haze of shock and pain, I looked up at my daughter, expecting her to intervene, to be horrified by her husband's violence. Instead, she stood watching, her expression cold. "The money is ours," James was shouting now. "It should have been ours from the beginning. Robert built that business with loans from my father. Without that initial investment, he would have been nothing." This was news to me, and almost certainly a lie. Robert had started with a small inheritance from his own father and a bank loan. He had never mentioned borrowing from James's family, whom he hadn't even met until decades after establishing his business. I tried to stand, but James shoved me back down. "You're going to fix this," he demanded. "Call Michael tomorrow. Reinstate the original will." "No," I said, tasting blood from my split lip. "I won't." James grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet. "Then get out. This house should be ours anyway." "This is my home," I protested. "You have no right." Before I could finish, Ashley stepped forward and grabbed a handful of my hair, pulling so hard that tears sprang to my eyes. "You heard him. Get out." Together, they dragged me toward the front door, James gripping my arm so tightly I could feel bruises forming. Ashley pulling my hair like she was controlling an animal. I struggled, but at 67, I was no match for their younger strength. They threw open the front door and continued dragging me outside. I stumbled on the steps, nearly falling again. Across the street, I saw my neighbor Walter standing in his driveway, frozen in shock at the scene unfolding. Next door, Nancy was gardening and straightened up, her mouth open in horror. "Help!" I called out, my voice strained with pain and fear. "Please help me." "Mind your own business," James shouted at the neighbors. "Family matter." Ashley released my hair only to push me roughly from behind, causing me to stumble across the lawn and fall to my knees. $5 million, Mom," she hissed, her voice venomous. "That's what you're choosing some stupid charities over. Your own family." I looked up at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Family doesn't do this," I said quietly. James stepped forward again, his intention to inflict more pain clear in his expression. But before he could reach me, a firm voice called out from across the street. "That's enough." It was Walter, my 75-year-old neighbor, now walking determinedly toward us with his cell phone in hand. "I've called 911. The police are on their way." James spun toward him. "Stay out of this, old man." Walter didn't flinch. "I was a Marine before you were born, son. You don't scare me. Now back away from her before you make things worse for yourself." Nancy had come over as well, along with another neighbor I only knew by sight. They formed a protective semicircle around me. James and Ashley stood on the porch, suddenly aware of the audience they had attracted and the consequences that might follow. "She fell," Ashley said loudly, attempting damage control. "We were trying to help her inside, and she got confused, started fighting us." "That's not what I saw," Walter replied steadily. "And it's not what I told the dispatcher." In the distance, sirens wailed. James grabbed Ashley's arm. "Let's go, now." "But the house," Ashley began. "Leave it." James pulled her toward their car. But before they could escape, 2 police cruisers turned onto the street, blocking the driveway. 4 officers emerged quickly, assessing the situation. One approached me while others intercepted Ashley and James. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the officer asked, kneeling beside me, where neighbors had helped me sit on the grass. "Ambulance is on its way." I touched my cheek, wincing at the tenderness. My scalp burned from where Ashley had pulled my hair. My arm was already darkening with bruises. "No," I answered truthfully. "I'm not all right. My daughter and son-in-law just assaulted me in my own home." Across the lawn, I could hear James giving his version of events. "Misunderstanding. She's been having episodes. We were trying to calm her down. She attacked Ashley first." The officer with me listened to my account, taking notes. When I mentioned the security cameras that would have captured everything, her expression turned grim. "We'll need to see that footage," she said, "and we'll need statements from your neighbors as well." The ambulance arrived, and paramedics examined my injuries. Nothing was broken, but they recommended going to the hospital for further evaluation. As they helped me onto a stretcher, I saw Ashley and James being handcuffed and placed in separate police cars. Ashley looked over at me, her expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. For a moment, I saw a flash of the little girl I had raised, now lost in this stranger's hateful gaze. "I'm sorry it came to this," I said softly as they wheeled me past. She turned away, refusing to meet my eyes. In the ambulance, as the adrenaline began to fade, the full weight of what had happened descended upon me. My own child had participated in violence against me, for money. The family we had been was gone forever, shattered beyond recognition. I closed my eyes and allowed myself finally to weep. The hospital confirmed what the paramedics had assessed: significant bruising, a split lip, contusions on my scalp, but no broken bones or internal injuries. The physical wounds would heal relatively quickly. The emotional ones would take much longer. Carol arrived within the hour, her face pale with shock and fury when she saw my condition. "I'm staying with you," she declared, not a question, but a statement of fact. "You're not going back to that house alone." 2 police officers came to take my formal statement. I provided the access codes to my security system and contact information for Michael, who had copies of the recorded conversations. They informed me that Ashley and James were being held on charges of domestic assault, with potential additional charges pending investigation. "Do you want to press charges?" one officer asked gently. The question tore at my heart. What mother wants to send her child to jail? But what had happened wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a heated argument gone too far. It was the culmination of months of calculated behavior, of deliberate attempts to harm me for financial gain. "Yes." I answered, my voice stronger than I expected. "I do." Later that evening, Michael arrived, having been contacted by the police. He sat beside my hospital bed, his familiar presence comforting amidst the chaos. "I should have taken your concerns more seriously from the beginning," he said. "I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it would escalate to this." "None of us did," I replied. "I keep thinking about Robert. What would he say if he could see what's happened to our family?" Michael reached out and took my hand. He would be heartbroken about Ashley, but he would be proud of you for standing up for yourself, for not letting them manipulate or intimidate you. The hospital kept me overnight for observation. Carol stayed in a chair beside me, refusing offers of a cot. Every time I woke from restless sleep, she was there, sometimes dozing, but mostly watchful, as if she feared Ashley or James might somehow find their way to me. The next day, I learned they had both been released on bail, with orders to stay away from me and my property. The police had reviewed my security footage, which clearly contradicted their version of events. The prosecutor was confident about the case. I couldn't return to my house immediately. It was technically a crime scene, and investigators needed to document everything. Carol took me to her home, a cozy 2-bedroom condominium where I occupied her guest room. The following days passed in a blur of police interviews, consultations with the district attorney's office, and visits from victim advocates who explained the court process and my rights. News of what had happened spread quickly through our community. Some friends called or visited, offering support and expressing shock. Others kept their distance, perhaps uncertain what to say or whose version of events to believe. A week after the assault, I finally returned home, accompanied by Carol and a police officer, who did a walkthrough to ensure everything was secure. Standing in my living room, looking at the coffee table I had crashed into, I felt a wave of vulnerability wash over me. This space that had been my sanctuary for 40 years now felt tainted, unsafe. I can't stay here, I realized, the words escaping before I had fully formed the thought. Carol nodded, understanding. You don't have to decide anything right now. Stay with me as long as you need. But the decision had crystallized in that moment. I called a realtor the next day and arranged to put the house on the market. There were too many memories now, both beautiful and painful. I needed a fresh start. The legal process moved forward. Ashley and James accepted a plea deal rather than risk a trial with the video evidence against them. They would each serve 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and community service. The restraining order would remain in effect for 5 years. I attended the sentencing hearing, sitting silently at the back of the courtroom. Ashley never turned around, never sought me out with her eyes. James stared straight ahead, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. Neither expressed remorse when given the opportunity to address the court. As they were led away, I felt no satisfaction, only profound sadness and a strange sense of release. The worst had happened. My deepest fears about their intentions had been confirmed. There was nothing left to dread or discover. My house sold quickly. The real estate market was strong, and despite what had happened there, its inherent value remained. I found a lovely 2-bedroom cottage in a planned community for active seniors about 30 miles away. The neighborhood had security gates, walking trails, a community garden, and organized social activities. It was a place to heal and eventually to build a new life. Moving day was emotional. Carol and several other loyal friends helped me sort through decades of possessions, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to sell. Each object held memories. Robert and me bringing home our newborn Ashley family holidays, quiet evenings together. I kept what brought comfort and released what triggered pain. The day before the final move, I visited Robert's grave. I sat beside the headstone, tracing his name with my fingers, as I had done so many times. I wish you were here, I told him. I wish we could have protected her from becoming this person. I wish I knew when we lost her. There was no answer, of course, just the soft rustle of leaves in the cemetery trees. But as I sat there, I felt a gradual easing of the guilt I had been carrying. Robert and I had given Ashley love opportunities values. Her choices were her own. James's influence had been significant, but ultimately she had decided to participate in the scheme, to value money over family bonds, to use violence against her own mother. I couldn't change her choices. I could only make my own. That was 8 months ago. Today, my life looks very different. My cottage is small, but perfect for my needs, decorated with select treasures from my old home, but also new purchases that have no painful associations. I've made friends in the community, other women my age who understand loss and reinvention. The foundation I established with Robert's estate is flourishing. We focus on supporting elderly victims of abuse, providing legal assistance, emergency housing, and ongoing support services. I serve on the board and volunteer weekly, finding purpose in helping others navigate situations similar to what I experienced. Carol visits, often staying in my guest room for long weekends, where we garden watch old movies and sometimes talk late into the night about everything and nothing. Her friendship has been my constant, a reminder that some bonds remain unbreakable, even when others fail. 2 months into my jail sentence, Ashley sent a letter. The handwriting was familiar, but the tone was not, formal, constrained, lacking the casual intimacy we once shared. She expressed regret for how things had escalated, but stopped short of taking full responsibility. There was an undercurrent of blame. If only I had been more generous, if only I had understood their financial pressures, if only I hadn't changed the will. I read the letter several times before setting it aside without responding. Perhaps someday I will. Perhaps in time, after counseling and reflection, she might come to genuine remorse. I haven't closed that door completely, but I'm not rushing to open it either. James, I've heard through mutual acquaintances, has filed for divorce while in jail. Whether this represents a real change of heart for Ashley, or merely a strategic move, I don't know. Part of me hopes she might find her way back to the person she was before money and greed consumed her. Another part remains cautious, protective of the peace I've worked so hard to establish. The greatest lesson in all of this has been about the true nature of wealth. Robert and I accumulated material success, yes, but our real treasure was in our love for each other, our integrity, our friendships. Ashley and James coveted the money, but missed the true inheritance. Values that can't be counted in dollars, a legacy of kindness and mutual respect. I've learned that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the friend who sleeps in a hospital chair to keep you safe. Sometimes it's new acquaintances who become confidants, sharing recipes and garden cuttings and quiet understanding. Sometimes it's the community you build around yourself when the one you were born into fractures beyond repair. Most importantly, I've learned my own strength. At 67, I faced one of the most painful betrayals imaginable and emerged not just surviving, but eventually thriving. There are still difficult days, still moments when grief catches me unaware. But there is also laughter, purpose, and a quiet joy in the life I'm creating. If you're watching this and facing your own family betrayal, your own difficult choices, know that healing is possible. The path isn't linear. There are setbacks and unexpected emotions, days when the pain feels fresh again. But each step forward matters. Each boundary you establish, each moment of joy you allow yourself, each new connection you form, helps rebuild what was broken. Have you ever had to start over after betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to help others find this community of resilience. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives come after the most difficult ones.